teaches, he's an author, he's a singer. I even said, hey, let's put on our Pentecostal hats and sing a song today, and he agreed, so we're going to have fun. But he's also the founder of Kaleidoscope, a children's foundation. He may tell you a little bit about that. David's just a man after the heart of God. But he works with children around the globe so that they have water, they have access to education, and he works very hard to bring in the funding to do these things. He's here today to share from his heart. Would you please welcome the Reverend David Ault.
When you listen to Elaine sing, can you feel something that goes on inside of you, right? And she was reminding me because sometimes it's a particular piece of music, but sometimes it's the vocalist, or sometimes there's something within the energy that just goes right through all of the resistance into the openness and cracks you open. And I know that when you think of particular songs, doesn't it take you back to the moment? Doesn't it provide the smell and the experience and the feeling? And there's one that every time I hear the song, I cry. I mean, as long as I can remember, I cry. And my husband's not much of a TV fan, and so I am the temptress that makes him watch television every once in a while. But we were watching this series about this man struggling from the grief of his wife who had passed away. And we got to the final episode, and they started to play this song. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's clouds' illusion I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. But this time when I heard it, it matched exactly where I am in my personal, ongoing, teachable evolution. And that teachable evolution to me is really leaning into the principle, the founding principle of what we all know to be New Thought. And that founding principle is non-dualistic. So if you've ever listened to affirmative prayer, most of the time what you will hear language-wise is something along the lines of, the only reality is God. That's a non-dualistic understanding that behind all surface conditions, there is, my favorite word, meticulousness, an unfailing, perfect patterning, an infinite intelligence, right? And if you were like me, coming from a Pentecostal background that told me I was born of sin, that was very attractive. In fact, the first person who ever told me that was Louise Hay herself, back in the 80s in Los Angeles. You may know I got to travel with her for years as a member of a trio. So she was my mom. She was like my second mom. In more ways than one, she was like my real mom. And she saw, as my friend Ann just reminded me of the phrase, warts and all, and still loved me. But what I began to learn through this path of New Thought and this non-dualism is that even in the apparent absence of, this is what we are called to gravitate to. This is, as the song says, to really not just sing the words, everything is holy now, but to understand it, right? And so what I have discovered is that we use words like infinite, and yet, isn't it amazing that we have no idea what that is? And Buddhism, the Buddhists really got it right. They would often talk about the realm of the infinite as emptiness,
But when we hear the word emptiness, we kind of like, it feels almost nihilistic in some way. But the real word that there's no English word for is called sunyata. And sunyata simply means that there is no way that you can begin to describe the infinite. Because we are finite. We got plopped into dualism. Yay. We got plopped into dualism. And the whole name of the game is, will you remember? Will you remember? And so it seems as though oftentimes when we think of, I've looked at clouds from both sides now. I've looked at life as good and bad. But if you've ever taken meditation courses, I bet many times they've said, think of clouds as thoughts. And if you can, don't grab onto the cloud. Don't grab onto the thought and own it. Just observe it. Just watch it. And if you are able to watch it, you can see and allow it to drift by. But most of us didn't understand that, or we weren't raised in environments that taught us that. And I don't know who came up with this number, but somebody said we think 60,000 thoughts a day. I always laugh because I said, was there someone with a clicker going, 60,000 thoughts a day? And here's the funny part, most of them are not new. They're regurgitated over and over and over again. Which means that at some point, we took the cloud and we owned it. We owned it as being real. We owned it as a part of our identity. We owned it in such a way that it actually became integral in our code of beliefs. But if you and I are attracted to, inspired by this idea of a perfect patterning or non-dualism, or wanting to lean more into the infinite, even though I will never reach the finish line, then it becomes something where we only can experience that through practice. And that means, ooh, here comes the thought. Just observe. Just observe. Oh my God, we did a Vipassana meditation, 10-day silent retreat in India. And my husband and I, we were the only white-skinned people in there. And so we couldn't understand a lot of the discourse, but what we could understand every single day, about 1,000 times a day was, just observe, just observe, just observe. And sometimes to annoy him, I will roll over and I'll go, just observe, just observe. But it's a wise instruction, because it isn't about escaping from the thought. It isn't about escaping from the fact of the phenomena that clouds will always come. But it's practicing how we build a relationship with that. And so one of the beautiful things that I've been practicing is recognizing that the clouds are there, but what I am is the sky. And sky then becomes a metaphor for what? The infinite. And the more that I can create a loyalty towards remembering that I am the sky, then everything that enters into the field of the sky is what they would call in Buddhism, phenomenon. And so I can rest in the appearance of phenomenon without forgetting that I am sky. Welcome to my TED Talk. Wasn't that great? That's pretty clear, right? That's pretty great. And we go, oh, got it. Until a cloud comes, the phenomena comes, and it feels so real, right? And here's the other beautiful thing. We do this. That's part of the curriculum of being human. Clouds will come. And again, it's not about judging ourselves when they do, but it's like, oh, here it is. It's time to practice. You, as a community, what a practice was up for you with the weather and the situation, right? It's very hard to be in the midst of that. It's very hard to know loved ones, to experience it yourself and to go, oh, it's just a cloud. It's just phenomena. I will rest in the infinite knowing that I am sky. But when you get out into the global experience, you will begin to see countless clouds that have been collected and owned as identity. And all of the inequality in the world, and all of the injustices in the world, and all of the seemingly maddening nonsense in the world, what is it that we can do to remember sunyata? To rest in the nature of the phenomena and not forget who we are. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do. And when we can really see that objectively, then we can become fascinated by how will I individualize that? How will I practice that? How will I bring that so much into my present awareness that I can get just a little bit more of a taste of it, that I can get just a little bit more expanded into being a representation of the infinite? My beloved has been in public health for over 2 decades, and this is his last week as a federal employee. That's been fun. And so one day I'll be inspired and he'll be down here. The next day he'll be inspired and I go, wait, we shouldn't be so inspired. And it's just this seesaw effect. And we continue to realize it's just, as they say, phenomena. It's just a representation of a cloud. But when I listened to that Joni Mitchell song the other night, I heard it in a new way. I have looked at clouds. I have looked at the nature of phenomena as good or bad. When in reality, I don't know if I've ever looked at clouds at all from the understanding of Buddhism, of sunyata, to just go, it's just phenomena. You understand the word phenomena, right? I get confused because I think I want to hear phenomenal, but it's just phenomena happening. It's the happening. So whether it's the diagnosis, whether it's the abandonment, whether it's the wounding, whether it's the loss, whether it's the joy, whether it's the exhilaration, whether it's the appearance of winning and success, all of it is just phenomena. And everything, as you reminded us, is holy. Now, how do we bring integrity to that? Because as a person who aligns themselves with what we call a new thought principle, there will always be the little finger, the little nudge that will say, how will you make this real? I like to think on that Palm Sunday, before it was labeled Palm Sunday, that Jesus the Christ, the master teacher, already knew what was going to happen. If you ever get fascinated by studying the lost years of Jesus, where did he go? You know that he traveled extensively and he studied extensively and he sat at the feet of ascended masters and he learned these things and he leaned into the shunyata to allow that which is with the infinite to come and be inside of him. Which to me indicates, if that is understanding beyond time and space, then the prophecy or the event was already known. And even as he rode into Jerusalem and the shouts going on, there was already the understanding of the human evolution of what would happen and transpire. And to rest in the phenomena of that. Why? Because there must have been an understanding of his own eternality. You recognize that, remember what he said? Greater things have I learned, but greater things shall you learn, shall you know. Isn't it wonderful to reframe in our minds from thinking of him as the exception to the example? The example that calls to you time and time again in the nature of phenomena to not forget who you are. And so how do we practice that? And this is my favorite part about being a minister. It's like, okay, that's so poetic, David. Where's the practicality? How do I do that? How do I do that? So I think about Brené Brown. I'm sure you know Brené Brown. You've read her books, right? Great researcher, great ability to weave a tale that inspires. And I remember in this one particular book, she talked about her grandmother. And she said that her grandmother professed to be an alcoholic at a time in our Western human history where not only was that still taboo to admit that, but for a woman to admit that was even more taboo. And yet her grandmother had been pushed so far into the metaphoric corner of pain that she didn't care about that, and she just wanted help. And so her grandmother got sober. And the journey of her sobriety and how she came out on the other side of it produced within her an infinite nature that resisted nothing and accepted all. Which, another Buddhist thing, reject nothing, welcome all. Do not reject the phenomena, just observe the phenomena. And in so doing, you welcome all. And so Brené Brown said she was a young teenager when her grandmother had completed this treatment and made such an impression upon her because her grandmother did not do that thing that most of us in this room do. And that is when someone compliments you, you go, reject, right? Her grandmother was like, tell me more. If someone offered her grandmother something, she just took it and she said, thank you. Without some kind of false piety, she just accepted the gift. Something within her transformation dropped all of that nonsense of propriety, and she understood that her life could be a receptacle for miracles because it had been. So she lived on a cul-de-sac. And at the end of the cul-de-sac was a railroad track. And if you've ever read anything or watched movies, or you know the era of the hobo who would hop on the train, and then they would ride the train for a particular area, and then they would hop off. And sometimes they would go and do this in order to find work, and they would live this transient life. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this, but there was a special marking system that people would use, like a sign, like you're safe. You're safe here. Brené Brown's grandmother knew this marking, painted it on the curb in front of her house, bought extra dishes and extra flatware. Every night for supper, she cooked more than the family could eat, and then she would put the extra out on the porch along with the flatware and the plates. And when the hobos would jump off of the train, they would see the sign and they knew that it was safe to go up on her porch and eat. And this became a regular occurrence. A regular occurrence. And Brené Brown talked about the fact that that there's this slang called easy mark. So her grandmother was an easy mark for the hobos. But Brene Brown went on to talk about the fact that there are great nuances and great inspiration in terms of the easy mark. Because think about it. If you live in an infinite universe, a universe that is by its very nature constantly giving, constantly responding to what you are accepting, wouldn't you want to be an easy mark for the universe rather than going no? Wouldn't you want to develop, like Brene Brown's grandmother, the ability to say yes, dare I say, to all phenomenon? Recognizing and understanding that sometimes, isn't it true, hindsight is a meticulous form of 2020 where we all go, oh my God, I had no idea that this would be the thing that would come from that. At the time, we're cursing it. And I know that you have example after example after example after example of how that's been true in your life. Time and distance can be a healing balm, and you can begin to look back and you can begin to see how right and perfect that seemingly path of pain was. And now, I bet you join with me when I look back at some of that stuff, and I would not change it for anything. That is resting in the nature of phenomena. Now I can look at clouds from a variety of ways and still get to say, I really don't know clouds at all. Because the journey of understanding that will never end. Do you know that's the definition of a visionary? A visionary is someone who understands that whatever the call is, whatever the urge is, I love this phrase, whatever the inner propulsion in you, in your personality that is driving you, urging you to move something forward, and you say yes to that, a visionary understands that they will spend the rest of their lives being in alignment, saying yes to that inner propulsion and knowing it will never be finished. That's where that beautiful phrase, I plant trees whose shade I will never sit under. And so as you think about your personal relationship with the infinite, can I tell you something? Thank you. Have you ever thought about it this way? The person or persons who will positively impact your life the most, you haven't even met yet. Sit with that for a second. But when we are so restricted into thinking that the cloud is real, when we are so self-identified with the story, the finiteness of the human experience, it's neither good nor bad. But you and I then are not an easy mark for that which waits in the expectancy of our yes. And so my want for you is to begin to cultivate a whole new season of yes. A whole new season of experimentation in what it means by you, your personality, your call, your willingness to create this personal relationship with this thing that is indescribable, called the infinite, that will, dare I say, sometimes pick you up by your heels, turn you upside down, shake everything outside of you. And in the moment that it's happening, we're like, stop. But then when we rest in the nature of the phenomenon, we go, wow, what a ride. I always wish that there was a way that I or someone next to you could have such an influence within you that when you forget that there is something, someone, some song that will help you remember who you are. Help remember who you are. And so today, as we ride into Jerusalem, can you ride in there understanding that come what may, when the metaphoric crucifixions, and they will come, and all that those really, really are, and hear me, please, they are the identifications that must be dissolved and let go before we can begin to understand more greatly what our infinite nature is. Ram Dass used to call it bearing the unbearable. And I know you've all been there. How does one bear the unbearable? Well, one doesn't. Not when they are committed to their finite nature. The way that you and I bear the unbearable is that the thing that identifies with it as being unbearable must die. So that as that identity dissolves, a new identity is born that can bear any of the phenomena. And before you think that you are incapable of that, I want you to know any thought like that, again, is pushing it away. All that we have to say is yes. 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 What have we got to lose but our finite nature? And so, as we close today, I thought it would be nice to incorporate this, not in a Joni Mitchell way, but in a Reverend Michael Gott way. And it seems as though your beloved leader has the voice of Buddha, but better. So Michael Gott is a minister at Unity of Houston, a fantastic singer-songwriter as well. And this is his composition. So this is, I am the finite. Your beloved is the infinite. But it goes kind of something like this. When I forget, will you remember for me? When I forget, will you remember for me? Help me see what you see when I forget, when I forget.
When you forget, I will remember for you. When you forget, I will remember for you. I will see
When I forget, will you remember for me?
I will remember.
When I forget, will you remember for me?
I will remember. I will see
What you
can see.
when I forget,
When you forget.
when I forget.
When you forget.
If you'll close your eyes this morning. Oh, take a breath. Understanding that it is natural to forget. Forgetfulness is not condemnation. Forgetfulness is just a part of being human, a part of the play of the finite. But real redemption is that moment when something can remind you that everything is holy now. Everything in its form and its appearance is but a cloud. And that to be an easy mark for the universe is to not only recognize that, but to breathe and to not own or claim those things that come, the nature of the phenomenon. But in the breathing, it passes. So we want you to try singing this with us. You can sing these words. So the first one, When I Forget, it goes like this. When I forget, will you remember for me? When I forget. When I forget, will you remember? Will you remember for me? Help me see. Help me see what you see. What you see. When I forget, when I forget.
And now hear the universe singing this back to you, and sing it with me. When you forget, I will remember for you. When you forget, I will remember for you. I will see. I will see what you can't see.
What you can't see.
When you forget. When you forget.
When I forget.
I will remember.
One more time. I will remember. I will remember. And so it is.